Hello, friends, and welcome to the Weekend Catch Up Club, the coffee morning show brought to you live every Saturday, direct to Facebook and available later on demand at youtube.com/gamertagged and podcast services. Today, I am joined by an awesome special guest. It is voiceover artist, actor, singer, and all-round awesome person, Sara Lynam is joining us. Hello, Sara.
Hello. How you doing?
I am really good. I've been looking forward to this chat for pretty much since we originally booked it in and got chatting on Twitter. And now that I see your setup, I'm just incredibly jealous of this amazing sound booth that you've got. So you're gonna have to explain this to our viewers.
Oh yeah, sure. So this is my booth that I do all my voiceover work in. It's basically like a 7 foot tall, giant, thick box thing in the living room. Because that's where booths should be when you're
Yeah.
working from home. It's only a recent addition for me since October. Before that, I've sort of had various kind of everything from the pillow fort, like duvet over a clothes horse kind of situation. That was where I started. Humble
Yeah.
beginnings. To what was and then in the last flat we actually had a cupboard space that I converted into a studio. And
Yeah.
that was actually really good. Like once you sort of understand the way that the kind of acoustics are meant to work,
Mhm.
you can kind of treat a space quite well. The soundproofing is harder than the treatment side of things because any sort of background noise that bleeds through if you don't have something built specifically to
Yeah.
stop it will be heard in the back of the recordings.
We mentioned the dog barking. You may actually hear a
Yeah.
baby crying from the back of my room as well because my wife's downstairs trying to keep her little baby boy like don't scream whatever you do because I don't have an isolation booth. It's just like a spare room that I've kind of treated but not really professional grade treated. So we may hear a little like scream occasionally, but it's fine. It's all
That's all right.
atmosphere and immersion. You're
Exactly.
here in the podcast with us.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really there in the room in your house.
Yeah. So this thing is like a TARDIS, and I've already
Mm.
noticed that you've got some really awesome Christmas decorations up, like the little
Yeah,
lights and
yeah.
everything. So clearly, this is going to have to be like an ongoing seasonal theme that you do for recording. I need an Easter theme. I need the Halloween theme. You're going to have to keep it
That's
going.
such a great idea. How did I not even think of that? Like, I'm like Christmas obsessed. Like, Christmas is one of my favorite times of year. And I like when I put these up, one of my voiceover agents were like, "Oh, can you do like a cute little video from your booth to be like, hey, I'm working from home in my
Yeah.
home studio, and I'm a voiceover artist, and I love Christmas." That's exactly what I said in my video.
That was the script verbatim. Excellent.
So I was like, yes, look, I've got loads of Christmas lights. I'm going to put them up around the booth. I put a whole bunch of tinsel and everything everywhere, and it was great. And then I was like, I don't want to take this down.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a little bit of Christmas cheer, especially like during all this lockdown stuff. You need to
Yeah.
kind of grab onto the things that are exciting and keep you going. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to leave the Christmas lights up. But now I'm like, oh yes, Easter. The Halloween, especially, that's going to be cool. That's going to be real cool.
Yeah, you can do like your Scarlet Witch thing, and of course that might. Are you all caught up in WandaVision? Because we may
No,
talk
I
in-
haven't watched the
Oh,
last
okay,
episode yet.
okay.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Okay, that's fine. So yeah, you're obviously a background. An actor, a singer, a voiceover artist. How did you get started on that? Like your background from the very beginning, getting started in this crazy
my
profession.
goodness.
Like, how did it all kick off? And you're obviously successful. You're doing really great projects these days. Like, walk me through the very beginning as to how it all started for you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, that is literally going right back to being a toddler, probably.
All right.
Yeah. All the way back, many, many moons ago. Tiny little girl in New Zealand, going to dance classes. And my mum was like, she could tell that I loved being on stage. Like going to
Yeah.
classes was fun, but my favorite moments were when I was like doing a recital, so a big performance to an audience of all your family. So I loved that. I did dance all the way through until I was about 13, maybe, when we moved towns and we went to this new dance school. And I basically hated the teacher. And I was like, Mum, I'm not doing dance anymore. I'm not. No, I'm done. I'm out. Peace. And then And then I sort of had a few years where I wasn't really doing anything in that vein. The closest I came to any sort of performance would be like, singing in the shower or singing in the car, because we used to do that like a lot, a lot, a lot. My mum was a big fan of musical theater, and she would buy the tape version of the soundtrack, and she'd play it over
Yeah.
and over and over on long like car journeys. So that's how I kind of learnt most of the kind of quintessential musical theater stuff that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And then it must have been drama school. No, I'm going too far ahead. Drama at school. I was like, yeah, I love this. I love acting. I love performing. I love being something bigger than me or something other than me, and kind of like tapping into something that
Mm.
people are like, where did that even come from? And I'm like, I don't know. It just came from my brain.
I'm assuming
Um,
that's drama class and not just like regular day-to-day drama at school.
Say that again, sorry.
I'm assuming that's the drama class at school and not just the
Yeah.
day-to-day teenage drama at school that you go through every day.
Oh, it's little of column A, a little of column B.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had this. I feel like there's been loads of little hurdles for me, because I got to the last year of high school, and I said to my my dean, I was like, I really want to do performing stuff. I want to do drama, and the dean turned around and said, no, you should be doing academic subjects, not flouncy drama stuff. And my
Oh.
mum sort of sat there and went, yeah. And so I did chemistry, calculus, classics, English, and economics in my final year of school. And did I say chemistry? Yeah, I did chemistry. And that was the class that clashed with where I would have been going to drama. So
Right.
everybody else was going to drama while I was going to chemistry. So I hated chemistry as a
Yeah.
result. Yeah. It was a horrible year. Like, I was like, what? I was sat there kind of the whole way through going, why didn't I just do what I wanted to do?
Yeah.
But it's surprising how these outside influences can kind of affect you and your decisions that you make. And I think, it all sort of came from a place of, you're a smart person. You should be doing academic things because you're a smart person. And I was like, but that doesn't discount the fact that I actually am passionate about the performing side of things.
Yeah.
So then that all happened. I didn't do any drama, and I was like, okay, fine. I guess we'll see what I'm going to do after I finish high school, because then I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do because I hadn't done any drama. And so I'd also grown up doing air cadets. I don't know if you have that in the UK.
Yeah, we
So
do. We do.
cool. So I was doing air cadets. I did it literally all through high school, and I loved it. And so straight off the back of that, I applied for the Air Force in New Zealand, and
Wow.
I got all the way through right up to the final officers selection board, like you do a week in. And I got to the end of that, and I kind of, in the back of my brain, went, this isn't actually what I want to be doing. So yeah, weirdly enough, I was this close to being in the Air Force, and then I came straight back off away from that, and I applied to go to university to
Yeah.
study theater and English.
That would have been a
And
massive
yeah,
career shift, like totally different direction entirely, right?
it's weird. Whenever I tell people, oh, I used to fly planes, they're like, what? What? Where is that even from? And I'm like, yeah, it was like a whole lifetime ago. But anyway, so that was that. Then I went to uni. It was great. Everybody was judging me based on the fact that I just kind of ignored whatever they, told me to do. And I was like, you know what? It gets to a point where you just got to follow what you want to do. So I did that. So at university, doing theater, the degree was slightly more academic than practical, but the practical elements of it, I relished in those. And I wanted to get more. So I started looking for theater companies that were outside of the university to audition for things. And I auditioned for my very first musical, and I got into Rent, and I was just in the
Classic.
ensemble.
Yeah.
Oh, it is an absolute classic. I was in the ensemble, and my only solo was I got a cowbell that I got to like whack.
Okay.
And I was like, and this is the one moment where
Yeah.
everyone's looking at me, and I'm like, doink, needs more cowbell. But yeah, that was great, and I was just like, this is it. musical theater is
Yeah.
awesome, and I love it. It's singing, it's acting, it's dancing sometimes, and it was kind of like it encapsulated everything that I sort of
Yeah. And
grown up with,
the
and I was like, yeah, this
electricity
is cool.
of a live theater, like that atmosphere is just full of energy, and nothing really beats it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
It's so special. And so I did a whole bunch of musicals back to back with this company, right up until the end of university. And I went, you know what? If I really want to do this, I want to do this properly. I need to go somewhere else. Because in New Zealand, musical theater doesn't really have a there's not really a career path for someone who wants to do it professionally. Most of the big productions are touring companies that have come from somewhere else in the world, and so you'll come into like a big theater, receiving house theater in Auckland or something like that. But anything sort of homegrown doesn't tend to be uh, at a professional level, or rather, it's unpaid essentially.
Mm.
If you want to do it as a career, yeah, New Zealand is not the place to start. So I was like, cool, I will go to London. And conveniently for me, my mum is English, so I had a British passport through her. Literally just got my passport renewed, came over here 10 years ago,
Yeah.
which is mad, 10 years ago. And yeah, and then I was like, oh, shit, now what do I do? I don't even know the first thing about getting started in this industry.
Yeah.
Um, and one of my old dance mates recommended a friend to me who was a director. And I was like, hey, I've just got here. If you've got any projects going, it'd be cool to be involved in that. And then I think a couple months later, I heard from them, and they were like, oh, yeah, come and audition for this thing, this musical called Redundancy, the musical. Um,
Ironic name
uh,
as well for a lot of artists, I would
yeah,
imagine.
yeah. Um, and it was yeah, it was an original piece by one of her friends, and I auditioned and I got one of the smaller characters in it, which was really cool. I was just excited to be doing anything, especially with people that you've never met before, because you're like, okay, so I must be good because you don't have any bias. You're not just going to put me in it because you're a mate of mine.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So I was doing that, all the whilst kind of like researching drama schools and trying to figure out where I wanted to train, and also try and figure out how on earth I was going to pay for it. Um, and yeah, so I did a few kind of small projects. I auditioned for a few drama schools, didn't get in, tried again the
Mm.
next year. So it took a little while to actually kind of get to a position where I could actually successfully get into a school. I did a 1-year diploma at Associated Studios in musical theater, which was basically, it was like a solid 9-month block of time where I did nothing but sing, dance, and act all day, which was just it was so good, so good. And then you're sort of out in the real world after that, which is scary, but awesome. And I actually had an audition almost as soon as I'd graduated, for a no, I like to describe it as an 80s time traveling football musical.
Wow. Wow.
It's called still to this day, probably one of the most insane things I've ever been involved in, and made some really good friends off the back of it as well. But it was all 80s music,
Mhm.
and it was this character who had an old like little like football magazine from back in the 80s, and it meant that he could time travel to various parts of like football history and try and change the like turn of
Okay.
events.
Okay. Wow.
I, and I'm not really a football fan, but like the concept of it was hilarious, and all the 80s music was great because like
Yeah.
80s music is primo. And I played this character who was kind of like a her name was Ulrika Pierce. And she was meant to be like Davina from Big Brother meets I think there's another character called Ulrika, but she was basically just this ridiculous over the top sex pot, who was just like anything any male in her vicinity she was just like, oh hello, yes, how are you?" And she was ridiculous. At one point I sung it's called Perfect. I can't remember who sings it. It's got to be Yeah, perfect. That song.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad you
throughout
did
the
that
whole
because
thing,
I wasn't going to sing that at all. So I'm glad you volunteered that one.
oh, I can hardly hear myself. So I hope that I hope you knew the song I meant based on
Yeah.
whatever pitch
Yeah.
I was singing it in. And yeah, I basically covered myself in shaving cream during the whole thing, sort of meant to emulate, a man having a good time. And it
Yeah.
was it was it was very messy, it was very silly, and then I had to sort of perform a relatively straight scene after that with literally just shaving cream dripping off me. And
Oh
I'm
dear.
stood there going, "I can't believe you did this," and all this sort of thing, and it's all very sort of, ridiculous, over the top
Yeah.
nonsense. Um,
I can't believe this hasn't been picked up as like a long running TV show or movie franchise. It sounds like ripe for like this
it
untapped material.
it is absolute. It's like an acid trip. It's absolutely insane. It was so much fun. Um, and then what did I do after that? It's just a series of kind of mad musicals. I started getting like into the sort of niche underground kind of indie, new musical theater stuff. And I auditioned for a show called Saucy Jack and the Space Vixens, which is a disco sci-fi musical.
Yeah.
And it's so good. I've done it 3 times now because it's that good. And you sort of play. There's these 3 space vixens. There's the leader, and then there's the two vixens who are with her. And I played the leader of the vixens. And they're sort of like this, like Barbarella kind of like
Yeah.
Wonder Woman style like superheroes. By the power of disco, they defeat the bad guys. Which was so. I mean, it's great. Why wouldn't you want to be in a musical?
Disco
where that
can
happens?
solve everything. Absolutely. Yeah. The power of disco. Fantastic.
Yes, yes. Ah, so good. I really miss that sort of stuff, like being at home, you kind of can't really do a full-fledged musical.
Sure.
Much as I've tried, in my living room. Um,
You just need to get like a big green screen up in the living room and just go nuts with
that would
stuff.
be great.
Yeah.
I'll just
Like bring-
record myself doing all
Yeah.
the different parts and have like a big like multi-part video that is just me,
Yeah.
every single character.
I'll be expecting the Sara Lynam Woman Xanadu show. That's what I'll be expecting. That has to happen. That has to
It has
happen.
to happen. That would be so good. Oh dear. I realize I haven't even got to the part where I started voiceover yet. Jeez.
That's okay.
I've
We've
just
got all
been
morning. That's fine.
nattering on. So then, yeah, a bunch of musicals where I met a whole bunch of different people. And then when did I start voiceover? It must have been about 5 years ago, maybe. I sort of had this moment of going, you know what? There was this one other thing that I really, really loved when I was a kid, and it was like anything animated. I big Disney fan, big animated movie fan, and there's Mrs. Doubtfire, Robin Williams' character is a voice
classic,
actor.
Of course. Yeah.
Like the whole
Yeah.
bit where he's like
Hello,
rattling off.
yeah. Yeah.
There's a bit where he's like talking to like a recruitment agent, and does like basically 10 different impersonations, and the
Yeah.
voices he can do are just insane. I was like, I
Yeah.
want to do that. That
Oh.
would be really cool.
Robin Williams was an absolute genius, but that scene is so funny because the person interviewing him is just like so straight faced. It's like, do you find yourself amusing? The kind of thing. It's like like a brick. It's just like there's no expression whatsoever. It's like, is this a profession? Is this? Are you trying to say that this is actually something you get paid to do?
Must have been hard to be that guy, because acting like the straight man against someone as funny as Robin Williams must have been nigh impossible. So,
Yeah.
hats off to that guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just love the idea of manipulating the voice to kind of make a different character, and for someone not to be able to see what you're
Mhm.
doing and to be able to get the exact idea across that you
Yeah.
have in mind. So yeah, it definitely came from a sort of like an animation or character driven kind of like, oh, I'd love to do voiceover in that sense. And so I went to a convention called Surviving Actors, which is like a massive like expo, where there's loads of little pop-ups, and you can go and talk to different people about different aspects of acting as a career. And there were two booths that were talking about voiceover. One of them called the Voiceover Network, and the other one is Gravy for the Brain. and
Good
they're
name.
both sort
Good
of
name.
it's a great name.
Yeah, everybody loves
Um,
gravy and pour it over the brain. It's just like
right?
sustenance and just moorishness. It's, yeah, love it. Love
Yeah.
it.
So they both had like a training element to them, but the voiceover network was maybe slightly more geared towards actually networking and meeting other people. And the Gravy for the Brain felt more like it was focused on training, but it still had an element of networking in it as well. So I was like, cool, I'll sign up to both of these things and I'll just kind of dive headfirst into like soaking up as much voiceover gravy, shall we say? um and yeah, and that was that was it for me. I was like, okay, yes, this is amazing. I have these little moments where I'll just kind of latch onto something, and suddenly I'll just go like full tilt into it. And this was one of those moments. And I mentioned to my brother, I think I said, "Oh, I've been doing all this stuff, all this voiceover training, and all this, and that's it's really really cool, and I'm really passionate about it." And he'd helped me out with paying for me to go to drama school. And then out of the blue, I got this microphone in the mail, and I was like, "What is this?" And he was like, "Oh, it's to
Yeah.
help you with your career and get you started because you can't do it without the right equipment." And I was
Yeah.
just like mind blown because one of the hardest things, aside from obviously setting up a booth and having the right environment, is getting some good equipment.
Yeah.
And he was just like, "Here you go," and I was like, "I don't deserve you."
But that's amazing because you had a champion there to like help you in your dream and help you get started and everything. And as you said, just having the equipment is such a barrier to entry a lot of the times. I mean, it's not like the situation we are in today where there's so many options for different types of equipment, whether it's the game streaming companies that are bringing out constantly new types of equipment to get people just broadcasting. But it's
Mm,
other companies of just like the quality of headsets with the little microphone that comes down. The quality
yeah,
of those are coming up like incredibly well. It's still not comparative to like a really good microphone, like whether it's
yeah,
a USB microphone or an XLR microphone with pop filters with acoustic treatment and that kind of stuff. But the bar is just getting raised like crazy, and
absolutely.
even in the right conditions, like the right room, your iPhone can actually capture some really impressive audio.
Yeah.
It's just mental. But yeah, back and originally, it's like yeah, there's very little options. So to buy like a good microphone,
Mm.
quite a difficult thing to come by, and that's awesome that you had that champion to really get you going and get you motivated. And it's like, okay, now it's all on you. You've got no excuses. Work your ass off. Get recording. Get to it.
So true. I think it's really special to have someone have your back like that, especially because I've had a couple of moments like in my career where I felt like maybe I didn't necessarily have someone who had my back. Especially early on when everyone was like, "No, no, no, go do something academic, or go be in the Air Force. Don't be a performer."
Yeah.
So to kind of have the flip side of that, where literally I'm being given the tools I need,
Mhm.
which is yeah, it's kind of mind blowing to think that I definitely wouldn't be where I am if he hadn't helped me out in that way. So, oh shoot, don't
Yeah, I
destroy
mean,
it.
that's a precious thing. That it's like an heirloom now. But no, it's so true because that could have been like a huge barrier for you that would have stopped you in your tracks and thinking, well, I can't do what I want to do because I don't have this piece of equipment and I need to go and do something else now. And the world would have been a sadder place without your tones keeping us all entertained.
Exactly.
Yeah. And who's going to do the Woman Xanadu show if you
Oh,
had
exactly,
not gone into
exactly.
this profession?
It's happening now. It's gotta happen.
Well, if you want to help broadcasting it, I can remotely do it for you. We'll get together like a little brainstorming workshop session, and we'll do this production.
Love it.
So yeah, so that was really you're kind of getting started as a voiceover artist.
Mhm.
So what was like some of your first projects, and how difficult was it to like understand how to do voiceover versus because you're getting started, you're nervous, you're kind of feeling your way through it. You don't really have the confidence or swagger as like a like the like some of the big voiceover talent that we obviously have nowadays. It seems to be like like whether it's in movies for doing ADR or or commercials or game voiceover, there's a lot of confidence that comes from just, or with anybody in any profession. So getting started there, how did you really kind of find your rhythm and getting used to that?
I think it's a combination of things for me, because it was funny going into it, because I was like, oh, I already know how to act. I know how to use my voice, because as a singer you become maybe more aware of it, and ways to manipulate things to make the right sound that you want. But it was like specific things like technique. So I think doing the training with Gravy for the Brain and a little bit with the voiceover network was like really, really helpful. And then it was when I went and recorded my first ever reel, the guy who I did my reel with was so like, he was so good at explaining things and saying, oh no, you need to be aware of the fact that when you make this particular like vowel sound or this particular consonant, that you're more likely to, there's a plosive that can happen if you
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, but you can have this and you can have that, pop shield and all this will help, but if you work on the way that your mouth is placed, that'll make a difference. And also, like, I I I like to mimic things, and so I would just listen and listen and listen and then try and pretend to sound like something. And I
Yeah.
used to do this thing when I was a kid where I was given like a tape deck where I could record myself, and I would literally record my own version of like adverts and a TV show. And so I'd kind of weirdly been doing it for a long time without even realizing.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, I probably still have the tape somewhere. Maybe I'll put it in my next reel, and it'll be some weird homage to like 10-year-old Sarah who was creating my own products. It was basically like a full-on improv routine of me going, okay, and now there's an advert for this chocolate bar and this orange juice that I've created, and this interview between myself and a character that I'm playing, and it was absolute madness. The mind of a child is, if you can tap into that,
Yeah.
is quintessential for getting like character creation and stuff. I always find that I revert back to the less you get in your head and more into just being the character, it
Mm,
makes a huge difference as well.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and that was actually something that I could draw from like acting too, because so much of performance, even though you don't have your physical body or your gestures, you're doing them in the booth and they come across through your voice
Mhm.
inadvertently, even if you don't feel like they are.
Yeah, I remember watching some of the behind the scenes stuff on the Lord of the Rings production, and it was when they were going through the casting process of Gollum and Andy Serkis, and the team, Peter Jackson, Fran Welsh, and
Mm.
Philippa Boyens, I think it was. They were looking at Andy Serkis's performance because on paper it was just like, oh, we just need you for the voice, and that's kind of it. But then they were looking at his audition tapes, and he was putting his whole body into it. And as you said, it's like that elevates the performance, and it becomes the character that you're playing, to the point where it's like, okay, we actually have to cast this guy in the role to be with the actors to
Mhm.
get that kind of those mannerisms and that physicality. And
Yeah.
it's so true. It's we're seeing certainly in the video games industry of voiceover acting for bigger productions. Certainly, it's now full mocap. It's not
Mhm.
just in the booth delivering the lines. It's like you have to now actually be on set to deliver the lines, because you need to be like, X character needs to be out of breath at this particular point. And yeah, you can fake that, but it's still not quite as a feeling authentic feeling as if you have literally just run and
Yeah.
then do your dialogue. So
Yeah.
it's
So
fascinating how,
true.
yeah.
I love the way that that's built up as well. Like, I think about games I used to play when I was a kid versus games that I play now. Just the level of like performance that you get. It's filmic, like it's full on quality performance that you're getting, instead of just sort of someone reading a line. And I guess having that performance element of mocap involved means you're literally getting everything from a performer, which yeah, I just think it just lifts everything massively. You only have to watch you know The Last of Us 2, which I didn't actually play through it, so my partner played through
Yeah.
it, but I was just like like watching the whole way through.
That game,
And
Jesus, yeah, it's just phenomenal and on so many levels. But Naughty Dog are one of the best in the industry at just that performance
Mm,
capture and how they do the
yeah.
tech behind that. And I was actually chatting with a game director on a previous podcast, and we were talking about the difference between motion capture animation with the dots in the face, and they now have the camera rigs that are looking at their face for the animators.
Mhm.
But there's also still a massive extra layer of animation where the animators still have to key little ticks and animation stuff like that, and matching that up with the emotion that the actor has given for the
Right.
dialogue and things. It's as an industry, it's fascinating how all of this stuff kind of comes together to create something like a Last of Us or like a Red Dead Redemption from Rockstar.
Mm,
There's just so many incredible examples now of holy crap, how where can the tech go? Like it's becoming
right.
so like photorealistic and believable. It's
Mhm.
like I really I'm stunned as to where we'll be at the end of this generation with the launch of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Last of Us 2 came out on 7-year-old hardware,
I
7-year-old
know.
technology, and where the heck are we going to be in 5 or 6 years with what they do next? It's crazy to think that. Yeah. But
Yeah, it is
yeah.
crazy. I think I saw something recently about how they're building something that actually literally makes a face, and then because they understand all the mechanics of the internal side of it, they can just
Yeah. Oh,
animate something
that's
just
Unreal Engine's new MetaHuman.
yeah. That's
That
right,
that
metahuman.
is mind blowing again
Yeah.
because yeah, it will. Apparently, it's been built in such a way that if you've got your motion capture from the artist originally, then that data can just. Whenever I try and explain this, I sound so flippant and like naive and oversimplify it. But I think the gist is it plugs in somehow to this metahuman engine, and then it will map the performance based on the motion capture data. I know that's
Mhm.
crazy oversimplifying it, like what's probably actually involved, but I think that's for a layman to kind of get their head around. I think that's roughly how it does, and it speeds up that
Mm.
workflow to
Yeah.
then like fully change your character's hair, eyes, whatever. But the delivery of everything is just like synced to such a
Mm.
crazy high fidelity degree that it's just staggering as to what's going to be possible. So for a voiceover artist, that must be incredibly like exciting as well as to the potential for different performances that you can deliver.
Yeah, for sure. I think I what I like the most about it is that coming from an acting background, the idea of being able to bring in what I would normally be doing physically anyway in a booth for the voice of something, it will actually get utilized and you actually get to see like a full performance put together. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how things pan out and what sort of things we can expect. It just reminds me I really need to uh get a PS5. I still haven't got one yet.
No, nobody can get one. It's not just you. Don't worry.
I know.
All the scalpers have them. Nobody can get a single one at the moment. So
Boo.
I know, I know. So when are we going to see you cast as like an alien or some like crazy character? What
I
kind of
would
alien would you like to be? That's the big question.
ooh, that's a really good question. So one of the things I did in lockdown was I played through, the whole Mass Effect trilogy,
Yeah,
because 'cause I'd never played it before, so it was a really nice kind of because I played, Knights of the Old Republic, and it kind of felt like it had that similar kind of,
yeah,
like, vibe to it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
everyone's always like, "Oh my god, have you played Mass Effect?" And I was like, "No, I haven't. I didn't get the hype," and then I played it, and now I fully get the
Yeah,
hype.
yeah. I'm getting some
Um
Liara Tassoni vibes from you. You could paint yourself blue and get some head tentacles going on, and you
Yes.
Henry Cavill is apparently teasing the TV show, so just like do
Yep.
your
I'll be there.
TikTok and say, "Hey Henry, just like cast me as Liara."
Yes! It would be awesome. Liara was my romance choice for
Fine
the first
choice.
game.
Fine. So have you played through the
Uh,
second one yet?
yeah, I've played through, all 3, and I played Andromeda as well. Um,
Awesome.
I as soon as I could romance Garrus, I was like, "Yeah, I'm here for Garrus." I was
Those
just sad I couldn't romance him in the first one. I was like, "Come on, look at this
those
guy."
those those diagnostics that he's constantly doing, it's like
Oh, I know, I know. It's very appealing.
I know, I know. But yeah, Where of the Shadow Broker, I think, is still one of the one of the best payoffs for like a spin-off narrative for Liara's story. I still hold
Yeah.
that as like such high regard, and I'm super excited for the remaster, which is coming out in a couple of months as
Mm,
well. So that's going to be really
absolutely.
fun to revisit, like especially the first one because it is old. It does look a little bit like rubber doll NPC characters.
Yeah.
Hasn't aged
Yeah.
terribly well, but the like the narrative and the music in those games are so like god tier. I
Mm.
think it was Jack Wall that did the soundtrack for those, and oh my goodness, like the one of my favorite tracks is called "The End Run," and it's in Mass Effect 2, and it's just this amazing driving tune that is just like full of emotion, and it's like it's building up this like the suicide mission which you have to go on to you know kick ass with the collectors. And man,
Mhm.
what a series.
Ah,
I'm so
it's
excited for it.
so good.
Yeah.
So good. I mean, I think
Mm.
about all the games that I've played, like, across, like, my lifetime so far, and the fact that I hadn't played it is kind of mad because of how big it was, but now that I played it, I would rank it above near everything else that I've played. It is it's next level, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and of course you mentioned Knights of the Old Republic, which is still to this day one of my favorite RPGs and certainly Bioware games. And I think a
Mm.
lot of that comes just from the quality of the voice acting. There's a lot of familiar voices that are, Jennifer Hale is one of my favorite voiceover actors. Femshep, of course, but
Yep.
she also played Bastila.
Yeah.
And I think the voice actor that played Caden Alenko in Mass Effect was also Carthel Nasi in Kotor as well. So there's a
Ah.
lot of like
Oh, yeah.
familiar, yeah, there's a lot of familiar talent there, which I think, oh my god, like what imagine being part of that legacy to leave that behind. It's like, yeah, I was in Star Wars. It may not be canon, but hey, I was in Knights of the Old Republic. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, and
I
Mass Effect
think
as well.
that would 100% be a goal of mine. Like, it's
Mm,
always been a goal of mine to, like, originate a really, like, powerful and big, like, character that leaves a legacy like that. So
mm.
anything like Femchat level would just be, yeah, that would be like, "Cool, I can die now. I'm good."
Yeah, I was having fun on your website with some of your showreel clips, and the one that I loved was your video game clip because it's a lot of little snippets of different things uh, that remind me of like audio logs and like the diary readings, and that is something in video games that I adore. This kind of narrative backstory as to before the world, if it was like BioShock or something like that, or Mass Effect, before the world has gone to shit, these were like people's lives and they were just jotting things down, and you hear that played out as an audio book, and I think that is so cool, and that must it's like a different kind of VO because it's not necessarily the central performance of a big character, but it's this like incidental like world building which is super
Mm.
fascinating and it's something that I really love about games. So
Me too, me
mm,
too. I think, it's really special because it makes it feel like the world is bigger than just the storyline that you're playing in.
yeah,
And the whole kind of like, yeah, so I did just a teeny little like radio spot as a news reporter for a game, a Steam game called Rain of Reflections,
yep,
and essentially it just says it's right near the start, and it kind of gives a little bit of exposition as to something that's happening elsewhere that is kind of encroaching uh, into the world where you're playing. And I just think it's so nice. And I'm one of those players who, when I play a game, I like to look at everything. I'm like fully nerdy. I'm like, I need to learn all about this world. I need to like, listen to that thing. I need to read that note. I need to like go through all the backstory stuff. Like I love it when there's an element of a game where it's like, okay, your character like has a journal.
yeah.
Like for example, like Arthur in Red Dead, or I'm playing God of War at the moment as well. The Atreus like journal as well, all
Yeah,
written from his perspective too, which is really cool.
yeah,
And I don't know, it just really enriches the story.
yeah.
Like the stories are generally good anyway, but like you just feel like it's not just you; it is this huge world.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
It fills everything out and it makes everything richer, and as you said, it fills everything. It makes everything feel bigger from that central line, and it's. I love it when games do that, and you can just pour over
Mhm.
just the little details in the environment.
Yeah.
And like one of my favorite ones, which was actually in the original Last of Us, and it was all just written notes from Ish, a character called Ish, in that
Yes.
game, and it was so powerful because it fills out this entire sub-narrative that you have to piece together yourself. And that was read in notes, but it could quite easily have been like a tape recording. He's just like left little cassettes around and he just wants to record his own thoughts out loud kind of thing. And I love that stuff because it does flesh the whole world out, and it introduces you to characters in non-traditional methods that you can then form an attachment with. And then when you get to the end of maybe that sub-narrative thread, you really feel for, okay, what happened to Ish? Like, you really get quite emotionally invested in these other characters, and you never see them on screen, and it's just either their handwritten notes matched with like audio dialogues, and that's purely from the voiceover talent that's bringing the emotion right to the front and center of the player. And that's really awesome to see as well and to hear.
Yeah, I got to do something similar as well in a game called Old Gods Rising. Essentially, you're in this. So you're a specialist to do with this particular old gods that they're doing a film for. So it kind of had like a double layer to it. And the guy goes in to sort of answer questions. It goes to the film set, and there's literally nobody there. It's completely empty. But there's all the film stuff everywhere, and it's kind of just like you're walking around going, okay, something horrible's happened. No one's here. It's kind of like everyone's gone to the Rapture style, like literally no one's there. And you can interact with things like you can pick up telephones, and if you dial numbers, it comes up with voicemails that have been left. And so I did a couple of the voicemails for that. And one of them was this person who was running a yoga, like a weekly yoga class. And partway through, her like, oh yes, and come and join us on Saturday at 11. And then she just goes, could you shut that dog up? That dog's making so much noise. And it just meant that character wasn't just a generic kind of, oh, and there's a yoga class on Saturday, cool, yeah, this is obviously a bigger world, but it was also like this character has a world of her own, which she interacts with as well. So even a teeny tiny little part has more than just the surface level stuff.
100% agree. 100% agree. So we are obviously still in lockdown, and I'm really curious as to how you stay motivated and creative. And well, I mean, you've got your TARDIS booth to like go into and just scream, I would imagine, as well, and nobody can hear you. So how do you stay creative is my big question.
I mean, if I'm being completely honest, it comes and goes. I'm like every person. When we first went into lockdown, I was like, because I'm relatively busy and I like to kind of go out and be doing stuff all the time. So to suddenly not have any of that kind of expectation either, I kind of went, all right, fuck this. And I just had like months where I did nothing for a bit, which was actually kind of nice. And then I missed it. I missed doing anything creative. And so the first thing I was lucky enough to do was, do you know the game Not for Broadcast?
I've heard the name.
Yes. So I know a couple of the devs, and they put a casting out for their lockdown level that they were doing. So everything was going to be filmed in lockdown. Okay. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And so it's all FMV. So everything's recorded, like filmed and then put into the video game, and you basically have a TV mixing studio that you are controlling what goes on the news.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, it's really cool. Really, really fun game. And so what happens is my character, I don't want to give away too much, but my character's a kind of psychic. And so she was real airy, fairy, and ridiculous. She believed everything she said, but her stuff was like, it was like, I foresee that tomorrow the sky will have clouds and the sun will rise and then it will set. And it's, yeah.
So it sounds cryptic, but it's kind of obvious.
Yeah, exactly. She said it in a really cryptic way, but it was just like, did you just say the sun will rise and set? Isn't that what happens every day? Yeah. And she's like, yes, but it will definitely happen tomorrow. So that was really fun. It was nuts as well, because so we literally had these sort of HD webcams that were recording us, and all plugged into a laptop. And I sort of had this little section of my living room that had been turned into a sort of mystical tent with we had like crystals and a little crystal ball and everything for me to sort of like hover around. And I had this little turban and this little floaty outfit that I was wearing. All in front of this laptop with this camera, which was very strange. And everybody dialed in, and I don't really know how they ended up doing it. It must have been mad doing all the editing side of it to get everything to actually sync up, because obviously you got a little bit of lag with anything online. Yeah, they did an amazing job, and that was crazy. That was really fun to do in lockdown. And then I did my very first audiobook in lockdown.
Ooh, tell me more.
Yeah. So I did. It's called The Nancys. And it's sort of a playoff of Nancy Drew, and Nancy's being I guess like maybe a little bit derogatory, but if you take it that way, it's sort of a camp, kind of like a LGBT like term for a sort of
yes.
A male that enjoys other male company.
Yes.
It's a young girl who's like the Nancy Drew kind of character, and her uncle and his partner, and they go around trying to solve a local mystery. And it comes across as maybe being quite sweet to start with, but then it is quite sinister, and it's very, very cool. So it's like murder mystery kind of style thing. And like I thought initially that it was going to be quite like a youth novel kind of thing, but it definitely was like a bit more mature than I thought it was. But it was very cool. I really enjoyed that. All set in New Zealand, so I got to like really ramp up my natural Kiwi accent, which is more subtle these days actually. But yeah, in the audiobook I was like, yeah, we're gonna go full Kiwi for this. The guy who wrote it really loved what I did. He's got a sequel coming out very soon, and hopefully I'll get to record that as well.
Yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. So what's the recording process like for that? Do you have to do it in like sections, multiple takes, or do you have like a good run and then they worry about like the editing afterward? Like what is typically that like?
So I think I had an atypical version for editing, because I think normally you do all the editing yourself as the performer, and you send over the finished product. So I got told I didn't need to worry about any of that. I just record the lines. If I make a mistake, just click so you can see in the waveform where the mistake was.
Okay.
And literally all they did was they went and edited it all together for me, and then it was chapter by chapter, so submitting a file per chapter, and then they did all the rest of the editing. So I literally got to focus on the storytelling, which was really nice. I'd imagine though, if I was doing the editing, because I get quite pedantic and perfectionist with things, and listen to like, oh, that word sounded weird, I'm gonna re-record the whole thing, and it would just take hours and hours and hours.
Yeah. I'm envisaging this sound file that you send over to the editing team, and so you go, oh fuck, and then snap. And it's like, god damn it, another mistake, fuck it, and then another snap. so
That's exactly right.
Somewhere there's got to be a master file of just you, almost like break beatboxing of just like snap, fuck it, and just snapping, and that has to be edited together like a tune or something. That has to exist somewhere.
I can make that my theme tune when you go onto my website. It's just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Ringtones are going to be downloaded all over the place. The Sara Lynam fuck it mix. Let's do it.
It's going to be number one. Yeah, let's get it to number one.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, because my wife actually does a little bit of audiobook recording as well, and it's
cool,
because her dad's an author of Chinese novels, Chinese kind of history and like lore stories, and it needs to get translated into English. So she's doing the audio recordings of like the English version of these books, and I'm just curious about your process, like super professional version versus my little studio with a decent microphone. It's like what's the best way to do this? And she does it kind of the way that you were talking, where she'll do like a few lines, and if she makes a mistake, she'll just scrub back and then like record over it. So she's got like a complete file when she sends it over to the company. And so far it's going quite well. They've sent her another couple of little short stories, because they're just short stories. They're not like big novels or anything like that. But she's enjoying it, and I really hope it leads to something as well, because it could be awesome. And it's just great
Yeah.
it's just a little, like a different form of creative expression as well, as to, it's not just reading, it's trying to bring some kind of like emotion to like the stories as well. And I love
Mm.
audiobooks myself. They're so much fun to just listen to. There's something magical about just hearing the human voice just telling you a story. It's something that's, it's existed for centuries and thousands of
Yeah.
years. It's going back to sitting around the campfire hearing a story, and audiobooks are great for that. I love them. I love them to bits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, in lockdown, we then, my theatre company, Uncanny Collective, we decided we wanted to do some online performance. And so we did a 5-day festival called Warnings to the Curious, which was a Christmas ghost story event, essentially. And so we had a bunch of performers choose either out of copyright, like old Victorian ghost stories. We had a couple of people write ghost stories, and we literally did storytelling via Zoom around Christmas time, which was really
Fantastic.
cool.
Is that open? Is that like a public link that people could tune in, or is it like invitation only sort of thing?
It was a ticketed event, so
Right.
you could either buy a ticket to an individual story, or
Right.
we did like a festival pass kind of thing where you basically pay 20 quid and you get sent the Zoom link to everything, and
Right.
then you join in to whichever ones you want to join into.
That's
And it was
awesome.
really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where can people find out about Uncanny Collective, Sarah?
So if you go to uncannycollective.co.uk, that's our website, and it'll have all our social media links as well. We have another show coming up actually on the 21st of March, which is called Emerging from the Earth. The idea sort of came from, it's on the equinox weekend. So coming out of winter, going into spring isn't actually traditionally a time where you think about horror. But we wanted to sort of like make it a little bit darker, because we're all about the horror with Uncanny Collective. Like
Yeah.
it's all to unsettle and unnerve, and yeah, anything spooky and horrible. That's us.
Yeah, it's always a good time for horror. Horror
Mm.
like try and transcend seasons, but or it should do anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's,
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have our podcast as well. So we have a weekly podcast, which are short stories. The majority of them are written by Paul and Steve, who are the other two members of Uncanny, along with myself and Connor. Myself and Connor, because we had the setup, have been doing most of the voices too. And then in the last half of the season, we reached out to some voiceover friends that I know, and I was like, okay, it'd be amazing for you to play this character, mainly because I can't do a northern accent to save myself. Um, and the guy who'd guest written for us, he'd written something based in the north, and I was like, oh, well, I'll give it a go. And then I was like, no, this is embarrassing. I don't want to. I want the story to be told as it should be told. So
Yeah.
I reached out to some friends, and they helped us out for those. But it's been really cool. It just despite being in lockdown, it means we can still be creative and put stuff out there, and
Mhm.
for other people that are in lockdown as well, for them to have something to listen to as well, and keep hearing stories.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hey, if you ever need a Scottish, voiceover guest, then my DMs are open.
Amazing. I will definitely hit you up.
That's awesome. I'm
Oh, I should
gonna.
say
Oh yeah, go
one more
go.
thing. I'm not actually allowed to properly talk about it yet, but I got to do some VO in January for a really cool game that's coming out in summer. It's really frustrating that I can't say anything about
Don't
it.
don't dangle the carrot like this, Sarah. Come on, our viewers are going to be like flaming the comments. It's like you can't just do that.
That's the whole point. That's why I'm doing it, just to be like, hee 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 hee.
Yeah, look what I know.
Um, but yeah, I'm still under NDA for that. But
Okay.
it was so fun. It was absolutely mad. When it comes out, I think everyone's going to be really excited. I don't know how much I can say, but like the other games by this publishing company have been quite kind of cult classic kind of ones. So yeah, it's gonna be good. I
That's
I would
awesome.
presume it PC in terms of where you'll
Yeah,
be able to play it.
yeah.
So,
For now,
but yeah,
these things
keep an
these
eye
things
on my
usually.
socials and you'll hear
Yeah,
about
yeah.
it.
Well, you're gonna have to come back when you can actually talk about it, and we'll have a proper like deep dive into all of that and some other,
Yeah.
and how and other like lockdown productions that we can brainstorm and come up with crazy ideas.
Xanadu!
Xanadu, I know. I'm trying to remember. Was Xanadu the one with roller skates? Olivia
I
Newton-John.
mean,
It was.
I hope so.
I think it was. I can't remember. I'm gonna have to see if it's on like Amazon Prime or something. Just take it out. I'm pretty sure my wife hasn't seen it, so we're gonna have an education weekend.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's gonna be awesome. So, Sarah, thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Weekend Catch-Up Club. It has been an incredibly fast, almost hour of just a brilliant chat, and I hope to get you back on. Hopefully as much as possible for future episodes, because it's been an absolute brilliant chat today. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who's tuning in today. If you're catching up later on demand, then consider hitting that like button, that subscribe button, and I will be back next week with another fantastic guest. Until next time, guys, take care and have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.